Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting of the Dartmouth School Committee to order for Monday, January 11th, 2021. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, Happy New Year, everyone. I hope you all had a wonderful time away from the Dartmouth Public Schools to some extent with your families, or at least your immediate families, and everyone had some time to just re-energize. Just a reminder, if you do have a cell phone on you, to please silence it. And I'm just going to continue reading my little disclosure as I have in the past. Per Governor Baker's order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, the public will not be allowed to physically access this school committee meeting. Members of the public can access the meeting via live stream at youtube.com/DHS TV Media. In addition, the event will be rebroadcast on DCTV channels 9 and 18 on the following days: Wednesday and Thursday at 5 p.m., Friday at 6 a.m., Saturday at 8 a.m., and Sunday at 2 p.m. The school committee reserves the right to implement additional remote participation procedures and will notify the public of these procedures as soon as practicable. And as always, you know, it never goes by without me taking the opportunity to thank Dartmouth Community Television, Mr. Parati, who and his crew, wherever they may be this evening, and Mr. Galashaw, who also helps out with these meetings. None of this would be possible without their help and support. That being said, can we have a roll call, please?
Chris Oliver.
Here.
Shannon Jenkins.
Here.
Kathleen Amaral.
Here.
Mary Waite.
Here.
John Nunes.
Yep.
Thank you very much. At this time, we typically allow 10 or 15 minutes for anyone wishing to comment on any of tonight's agenda items. If you have not done so yet, comments can be made to our recording secretary, to my right, your left, Kate Genthner. Her email address is kathleengenthner at dartmouthschools.org. Once again, that's kathleengenthner at dartmouthschools.org. It's my day job there I'm thinking of. Do we have any public comments this evening?
Not so far.
Thank you, Kate. At this time, Chair will entertain a motion to approve the regular session minutes of December 21st, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Nunes, a second by Mrs. Waite. On the motion, any other discussion? Chair hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you for that. Next up, under new business, FY22 through FY26 Capital Improvement Plan Draft. I'll turn it over to our Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Operations, Mr. James Kiley.
Thank you, Mr. Oliver. So you were provided with the draft capital improvement plan for 22 through 26. There are a number of requests that are prioritized for year one of this plan. So just to back up and talk about it a little bit, year one, what that would entail is there would be a meeting of the capital improvement. Well, first of all, you would hear it tonight, consider the plan. You may act tonight on it. You don't have to act tonight on it. There will be a meeting of the Capital Improvement Planning Committee that is made up of town residents, and I would present the plan that you have approved to them. They will then hear all the other departments' requests, compile everything, make recommendations based on the available funds that the town may have. That would then go before the Finance Committee, the Select Board, and then get to town meeting in early June. So that's what we're beginning of January, but that's our target for this. So there's a number of things on here, and I'll just briefly talk about them. And we have them in priority order based on our needs at the moment. The HVAC upgrades and maintenance, that's probably not a surprise to anybody. we put in a request for $300,000. I guess I'd just like to say that the town has been very helpful in funding improvements that we've made through this crisis. So they have allocated a significant amount of their CARES Act money to our buildings' needs through this. Not through articles, although they did fund a $75,000 article at the previous town meeting for our benefit. We have not used any of that yet because we are using their CARES Act money. We have contractors in working, we have our maintenance staff buying equipment and replacement materials and putting in their own time also to repair systems. So it's a significant undertaking. This is really a maintenance request with some upgrades, but more focusing on keeping things operationally sound. This is not necessarily to say we're going to solve all our problems with this. We have a lot of old systems, as you know, a lot of old buildings, and this is not going to solve that. But this will help us maintain.
Thank you, Mr. Kiley. Really quickly before we continue, that funding of the $300,000, is that earmarked for any specific, but would a big chunk of that go towards one or two buildings, or is that spread?
The whole
spread
district.
Right across the district.
Spread across the district to address the glaring needs that arise, which happen. We've spent a lot of time at the Cushman School and at the high school this year with our vendors working on, working on HVAC improvements because those were the areas that were needed. And fortunately, the town's been able to support that. But we need help everywhere.
Sure. And then my last question about the HVAC upgrades is, I had heard that there were some money coming through with this latest stimulus package. Have you heard any more about that?
Nothing specific from the state
Okay.
yet as to
Okay.
how that would be distributed or applied for or.
Based on need? Or,
Yeah,
okay.
nothing yet.
Okay. Thank you.
So technology hardware. So Mr. Galashaw each year utilizes this funding source. This is our sort of annual replacement cost that we have. We have an agreement with Town Hall to provide this. This actually does not come out of free cash or borrowing. This actually comes out of the operating budget and has been built in now for a number of years. Mr. Barnes was able to do that several years ago and continues to do that. We're thankful for it. And that, we just have more and more technology than we've ever had before. So this is vital in keeping us operationally, ready in the tech realm. So it continues to be a very important source for us. Technology network upgrades. So this is in conjunction with E-rate funding. And what we're talking about here is fiber optic cable replacement and network component replacement. So this is a project that Mr. Galashaw has on tap, ready to get operational. So hopefully we're able to get funding for this in June and move forward and take care of some of the needs we have and update the buildings. Flooring replacement project. We've had this flooring replacement project going on my entire 10 years that I've been here, and it's not stopping anytime soon. Although we're getting there. So what we basically focus on is deteriorated flooring and asbestos-containing material flooring, which is our older floors. Some of which are in great shape, most of which are in good shape. Those old asbestos floors, but. This is always an opportunity for us during the summer to abate those buildings and be done with that so we never have to worry about it again. And we'd be continuing that process, looking at the middle school and a couple of elementary schools particularly to focus on with that. Grease trap replacement. So we have grease traps in our schools, and that a grease trap prevents fats from going directly into a drainage system. So in kitchens, a grease trap is essentially a tank that's built into the ground, and fats go into it, and fats are separated from the water, so the water fats are contained. And then periodically they need to be cleaned out and emptied. They don't last forever, and this is to address those issues. And we have had some significant issues with them. They're not designed to be a lifetime, a building life type of piece of equipment. You need a mason to do this. We need to jackhammer the grease traps out and replace them. So I have a furniture article here. I actually had this on last year. We didn't fund it, and part of that was because of me. And when we went to the Capital Improvement Planning Committee, I was at some point last year, it became obvious that we did not want more furniture, because right now I have furniture stacked in all these storage containers. So it didn't make sense to do anything with furniture last year. But there's a few things that we've targeted with this furniture money that I think are important. One being cafeteria tables, and particularly in the DeMello and Potter schools, which are built into the walls, fold out, don't function, real problems. They're constantly breaking. You can't get parts for them. Our maintenance guys can fix anything, and they can't fix these well. It's just a constant issue. They've been on the principal's lists of things we need to address for many years now, and I really want to take care of those. But the other thing that I'm very concerned about is that I have all this furniture stacked in these storage containers. These storage containers are supposed to be watertight. I hope they are. But I'm just concerned that when we start to take things out, some of this older furniture that we have in there is not going to fare well between the moving around, getting packed, getting unpacked, and I think we could be in a position where we need to replace a significant amount of furniture just to get up and running if we were to, hopefully, in the fall, be back, with full classrooms full of furniture. So I've included that. I slid that back from last year into this year's request. Parking lot repaving. So there's a few schools that we want to target. There's some work at the Cushman and DeMello schools and the Potter school that we want to target. We've done this periodically through the years, done some good work on it. Done most of the Quinn school is in good shape, but we need to address some of those other areas. So that would be for vehicle areas and pedestrian access areas. High school auditorium, AV, and lighting systems. This has been on the list for a long time.
I thought it was funded last year or the year before.
Nah, it wasn't.
Got
Yeah,
cut.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So we've talked about it before, but we've never really acted on it. And it's time. It's unfortunately, you think this is the new building. Well, it's the newer building, but it was built with low bid. Some of that equipment is low bid. It's not great. It's not functional. It's not the best, and we'd like something to reflect our values here and really, do it right in that auditorium. It's a beautiful room and has a lot of potential, but that's something that's been on the high school's list for some time. Vehicle replacement. So what we're used for vehicles, we're definitely big on hand-me-downs, and we have hand-me-downed, if that's a word, the old sped vans to do other things when they're no longer able to drive 30 miles to go somewhere. It makes sense to use them in town. Well, even so, these things are getting old, and I have 135,000 miles and just beat up old vans that are starting to rust and not work well. We would be looking at fuel-efficient vehicles, try like the Ford Transit, smaller ones that are, nice fuel-efficient vehicles, something like that. And that would be for our sort of operations. We found through this process that we need to be flexible more than ever, and we don't have that much flexibility the way we're working on things right now, but we need to be able to move things around quickly with good, reliable vehicles. So my hope is that, that would be a consideration. It is down towards the bottom of our list, though, so I understand what that might mean. And then interior and exterior painting, we have a little bit of money left from a previous article for this, but we constantly want to keep up with this. My maintenance crew, in conjunction with some part-time help that we have in the summer, comes in and paints every summer, tries to maintain the buildings, and we just want to continue that. We want to be sure we can continue that process. So that's important for us as well. So those are the things that are coming up this year. Any other questions on any of those?
I'll turn it over to my committee members. Dr. Jenkins?
So I have questions on a few of these. The technology hardware, which I definitely appreciate the town doing that for us, but that's been $200,000, as you note, for several years. Has that started to affect our replacement cycle at all yet? I mean, how long can we continue to stay on the same replacement cycle if that number doesn't increment?
I guess I'd be remiss not to acknowledge too that the town, as part of their CARES Act funding, and Mr. Barnes reached out to me when we were struggling with some things and we worked out, not only would they support us with the HVAC, but also support us with technology. Mr. Galashaw there was a hard deadline of when we had to have this stuff in, and it wasn't easy to get a lot of these technology components because every school district in the country was searching for them. He was able to get some, and it's a significant investment that the town made from their CARES Act money. Now that's a sort of one-time investment, but it was big, and it definitely has trickle-down effect, and that was the intent of it. So we'll be good for some time, but you're right. At some point, we've increased technology so much. Is 200 the right number? I don't know, but we're thankful to have that.
I think I can remember being on the finance committee, and I haven't been on the finance committee for a long time talking about $200,000.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
It's been that 10 years.
Right.
Yeah, it's been
Yeah.
the same amount.
Yeah.
10 years.
All right, so my second question is just sort of more of a comment. On the DEF with respect to furniture, particularly classroom furniture, we've seen a really strong appetite for alternative seating for our students, and I would hope that as we start to replace our classroom furniture, I know it's not all classroom furniture, that we would figure out ways to sort of integrate that alternative seating for all of our students. That's just more of a suggestion. I'm sure we're doing that, but I know teachers are really sort of clamoring for that. And then the other thing I guess I would ask is, because our vehicles are so old, right, and fuel inefficient, are there any opportunities for grants? Have we worked with the interim development director about that? I mean, oftentimes there can be money for green or more fuel-efficient cars. And I know Mr. Haddad, right, that's sort of his role, so maybe he could help us either with the same money, get, electric vehicles or whatever. I mean, I think it's great to look for those sort of opportunities to save us fuel costs, and if the town can help us out with that, that might be a great opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure. I know the town has helped us out with the green community funding. And actually, the middle school boiler improvements that we're working on now that were funded last year are being partially funded through that. I don't know what other opportunities there might be.
The only reason why I ask is I don't remember Mr. Nunes or someone else remembers they got the BMWs they got for really cheap, and remember they had to put bumper stickers on them to say, this was grant funded. We're not buying BMWs for the town, right? So
Yeah.
I don't know that we're going to get BMWs for us, but there might be some opportunities around that.
Right.
Mr. Nunes?
Yeah, thank you. Just a follow-up on Dr. Jenkins. The BMWs and Audis and that different municipalities got and everything else was part of a state grant.
Right.
Municipalities literally paid pennies on the dollar for those vehicles, and the state also picked up in some instances the charging stations. So I mean, I can remember some people sitting there saying, well, you know, things are tough and you guys are driving around in BMWs and Audis. Well, yeah, it was a trickle down from the federal government through the state, you know, to the municipality. So for hybrid cars or electric cars and that type of deal. So that's what that was all about. Just that. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, too. You know, just a couple of questions, and I like the way everything is, and thank you, Mr. Kiley, for your explanations. I mean, the fact that right now we're taking advantage of free money, as I would call it, and not having to use, you know, the 75 grand, we still got that in the bank, is great. Thank you very much to the town for that. And also, in all seriousness, you know, thanks to the town for the technology money, especially with COVID. I mean, you know, with all the Chromebooks that we've had to buy and all the different technologies that we've had to put into place, we'd really be in trouble trying to come together and get them going. So I just for one, just want to say thank you very much. And other than that, I agree with everything that's here. And even looking forward, I know we talked about some of these last year, that being the high school track and the athletic fields and such. So I mean, I'm good with all of these at the moment. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I don't really have anything additional, but thank you.
Thank you.
And just a couple of points here. As far as the technology goes, I think $200,000 is great. I'd be curious to know, maybe through the budget process, what is in the operational budget for technology devices and technology hardware? How much of that comes out of the operational budget? And my guess is that I would assume that it's fairly low in the operational budget.
It is compared to this. Yeah, it's not anywhere near this amount. But there is some money still in the operational budget to support.
Okay. Because my only concern, Mr. Galashaw and everyone else, is that moving forward, since we've really kind of pivoted here, let's face it, right? Everyone, we're fully well, this week we are fully remote, and I don't know, I don't have the actual number. I'm not sure if you have the actual number of how many Chromebooks are actually out in the hands of students right now. 4,000. So we have 4,000. The district has given out 4,000 Chromebooks to pretty much. I would say that's just about every single student in the district, plus all our teachers, plus all our teaching staff. And I feel like I'm playing a game of charades here. So you know that's a lot of devices. My only concern moving forward is obviously the upkeep of these devices and the cycle and making sure that we're able to. I don't see this going away now that we're in this, you know, we're in this rhythm here with these devices. I don't see us pulling back on that. So I would be an advocate to see what we can do to support that and support this initiative. In addition, I know this is outside of the capital improvement plan. I said it last year and I'll say it again. We need to get Mr. Galashaw more help. And that comes, we'll talk about that at another meeting. What's the $78,000 specifically for the fiber? I know it's an E-rate project, so I'm assuming it's like 50%, whatever it'll be reimbursed almost half or right around half. So
Closets?
between the closets in each school. So you're understood. I think that's a great idea and a great use of the money. What else do I have? Last but not least, actually not on this capital plan, but I figured I'd bring it up because it was a capital, separate capital item. The stadium, Mr. Kiley.
Yeah. So in terms of the stadium, you know, we've not
I assume we're just in a hold pattern.
We are in a holding pattern. We've done some good design work in anticipation of hoping to, you know, proceed at some point. I did let Mr. Barnes know, because he inquired of me a couple of days ago, if he needed to borrow any money, and I told him at this point we were not proceeding with it in the immediate future. So not to be done this summer
Okay.
at this point.
But that does bring up a good point that every year that goes by, what we did approve, what town meeting did approve, is probably not going to be enough by the time we get around to doing it. Is that a fair assumption?
There's some risk of that. There's also risk that if you were to go out to bid right now, because of the inflated cost of building materials
Okay.
right now, that there's potential that the world sort of settles down a little bit at some point hopefully in the next year, and that construction material prices come back to normal, and there could be some benefit of that. But really, there's so much going on right now that I really didn't think it made sense to move forward
This town
right
and the
now.
school department to take that on at this point in time. And last but not least, as you have flooring replacement in there for $250, I know it's already been several years. How is our gym floor looking here at the high school?
It's interesting you say that. So I got here early today, and I went in and shot baskets for a little while, which is probably the first time I've done that in a couple of years. But the floor is seen some wear. It's seen some wear. I mean, I think it's generally in good condition and will be fine for quite a while, but it definitely is. It's definitely worn.
So in your estimate,
It's not on my 5-year plan,
It's okay. It's not on your 5-year plan.
but not that long after.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for all of this.
Yeah.
Dr.
So
Jenkins?
if we're going to the bottom, I only had my questions for the top. I have a couple of questions for the bottom part, the future plan. One, I've had a few people ask me about the tennis courts. Where are those on here? I mean, is it part of the track? Is it part of?
Yeah, the athletic facilities, it is something that we need to take a look at as well.
Because I've heard, I mean, the school graciously allows people to play tennis at times when they're not being used, and
Yep.
there's not a lot of those facilities in the town now, particularly since the tennis facility closed, and so I expect that those might come due sooner rather than later because they're getting a lot of use. The second thing that I want to say, I'm always sort of a broken record, but I will also note that there's nothing on here about replacement of schools, and we did a fancy project about replacing schools. We have $2.5 million for the window replacement at Potter and DeMello. We need to have a serious conversation about what our plan is for replacing our schools, because it doesn't make sense to spend $2.5 million replacing windows unless you intend to keep those buildings. And I know there's a lot going on right now with COVID, and I don't, say we should, bring this up now, but I would hope that maybe once we get closer back to normal, that maybe we could actually convene also with the town side, because it can't just be us advocating for schools. It's got to be part of a larger sort of capital master plan for the town. These schools are going to have to be replaced. They're not going to last forever. And we can't continue to, spend millions and millions of dollars, because I would assume we're going to get, look for reimbursement for some of these projects. And with reimbursement comes a commitment to use the building for 20 more years, correct? Generally speaking,
yeah.
That's
So,
where we're at with Dartmouth Middle School roof project.
Right.
Exactly, and that's, we had to do it because it was
Leaking.
raining inside in some places, right? But I think we really need to continue to bring this up, and to be a little bit of broken records about it, because, that is something we need to do. And I know when I was on the finance committee, one of the things that we did, which was not successful, so maybe this is not a good strategy, but we put a placeholder for the Pedestrian Bridge on the town capital project, because just it served as a sort of a visual reminder that, like, hey, this is out there and we need to. And so maybe at some point we do want to put some placeholders in our capital project to remind people all around that this is coming due, right? We can't continue to punt much longer. Our maintenance staff, to Mr. Kiley's point, is great. As is Mr. Kiley in keeping these things running, but, there's only so much blood you can get from a stone.
No, that's a very good point, and I think maybe come the fall or after COVID's kind of tamp down a little bit, that we do reconvene some kind of facilities group, that we start having that conversation and pull back some of those documents that were made available to us by that consulting and design group. Mr. Nunes?
Yeah, just, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not to put Mr. Kiley on the spot, but just, what's a ballpark figure to replace one of our elementary schools?
Oh, Lord.
I don't know. It's
20
probably gonna be $50 million project,
Yeah.
you know, it depends, you know, obviously
big?
is the answer, but it depends what you're gonna do. You know, depends which school you're gonna target, how you're gonna do it. The recommendations of the facilities master plan included some options for major renovation
Yeah.
versus replacement. We'd have to look at that. We'd look at additions to some schools, try and figure it out that way. So it varies so much.
Yeah.
And I don't think right now would be a good time to ask for estimates, because it's just the construction business is so in such a disarray right
volatile.
now. But I think that it would be, a significant
Okay.
significant investment. Obviously, we'd seek MSBA reimbursement for any project of that magnitude. We'd never move forward without it. So we would target most likely have to target a specific building and, seek MSBA reimbursement for that. As we talked about when we did talk about this facilities master plan, one of the issues that we will face is that we maintain our buildings very well. And as such, it doesn't make us a great candidate for funding. That's what you get. But it definitely, there are things that we could look at. We don't have overcrowding, so that also is a disadvantage for us when compared to other districts seeking funding. So we knew we would be sort of a borderline candidate for a building replacement. But that's not to say that the climate in school building might not have changed a couple of years from now, or 5 years from now. And obviously, you have to address it at some point. And, Dr. Jenkins is correct. They're not going to last forever. So we do need to have some plan. It may be 5 years, 10 years, more. Who knows? But have to have some plan for it.
And just to follow up on that, I think the other thing that we have to look at too is, where would we be able to put one of these schools? I mean, if we went brand new, do we move students into split them into a couple of the other schools and demolish one and rebuild on that site, or where do we go? Because I'm not quite sure what there is available in town for land. It's, again, my personal opinion.
No, that's a big concern, yeah. There's not a lot of available centrally located type properties to us. But, those are all things that we could talk about as a group when we consider the topic, and try and identify what our priority would be, and then push it and try and get it into the discussion at least.
Anyone else?
So, Mr. Nunes, I'll just say, all I remember from that meeting that we had with the plan people was the numbers were big enough, they almost gave me a heart attack.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think 50 is on the low end of the numbers that were
That's-
bandied around in that meeting.
that happened to be the one meeting I missed when I was sick. But I mean,
Yeah,
I remember
it
looking
was-
at all the paperwork.
It was, I think
brutal.
there was one option that did Potter and
Yes.
DeMello.
Yeah.
And then there was another option that did Quinn.
Yeah.
And they were all, I think, probably started at 60 and went up near 100,
What is
and not even
Westport?
talking about the middle school.
I do not
For
know.
100?
I don't remember.
I did know, but I
Okay.
don't recall exactly.
I almost joined you in the hospital,
It's a
Mr.
lot.
Nunes.
Yeah, with that one,
mean,
that's for sure.
I have no
A
doubt
lot more than
about that.
50.
That's it.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, if everybody is good with this, rather than, Mr. Kiley having to bring it back to us, if a vote on this tonight would be okay, I'm good with that.
I'm fine.
I don't see any changes. Again, my opinion.
No, unless there's any other
That's
Any
fine.
other concerns?
Okay.
Please feel free to make the motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the capital improvement plan for FY '22 through '26 as presented by our Assistant Superintendents of Finance and Operation.
Second.
I have a motion on the floor by Mr. Nunes, a second by Mrs. Waite. On the motion, any further discussion? Chair hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Kiley.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you all
Kiley.
for your support.
Let us know when you're going to CIP and
I
we
will.
can zoom in.
I will.
Thank you.
Next up, Student Opportunity Act, SOA report. Turn it over to Dr. Gifford.
Yes, SOA. So, to be perfectly honest, this plan that we're submitting on this week, we have to submit, is really an effort in compliance with DESE, to be perfectly honest. As you know, when the act was passed, the intent was to provide schools with additional funding. And since COVID hit and all of that, we can just pretty much say that that's not really the truth at this point. So anyway, we did do our due diligence. We went through this. This is the short form because it would be a district that would be receiving 100,000 or less. If things were true. And so one of the provisions of this compliance, if you will, is that we can focus on an initiative that we've already been doing to say that we will continue to do that. And so that's what we did. We decided to focus in on what's been going on at the high school, the two main pieces, or the two main initiatives, which is, as you know, about the project-based and personalized learning initiative that we've been really working hard at, and we had such good rhythm going until obviously COVID hit. And because we really started that with the idea of trying to reach all students and engage all students in more active and student-centered learning. And then the other piece, as we presented last year, was, I guess it was last year now, the Project Lead the Way curriculum. So we started to reinvigorate the course of studies along the engineering and robotics and computer science. So as folks have been retiring, we've replaced some of the traditional business ed with more computer science folks, and they've been to the training for the Project Lead the Way curriculum and have been implementing that with students. So those are the two areas we decided we were going to continue to focus on. We did include some of the professional development and what the funding is that we use or would be using, continuing to use, including grant funding. So we used some of the samples from other schools to develop our plan as well. And as you notice, it has 4 commitments that DESE asked us to say that we're doing. So yeah, so we would look for, the committee has to vote that we can vote for approval, and then we submit it this week and see what they say. See?
And what might they say?
Right, see what they say. But,
Good
you know,
luck.
there was no time or effort or money or energy to obviously create another initiative, but just to continue some of the work that we've been doing. So we would ask for your vote of approval on that.
Questions from my committee members?
There's not much to say, I guess, on this.
Dr. Jenkins.
I just have more of a statement, and I appreciate the work that you've done on this, but I think it's ridiculous
Yeah.
that the state has not suspended many of the reporting requirements during a global pandemic.
Right.
School improvement plans, right? Student Opportunity Act. You guys have a lot on your plate, a lot more on your plate than you normally do. And the least the state could have done to help out local communities was to look at their reporting requirements and to ease some of that burden.
Right.
And I am furious at the inaction in DESE and the Baker administration for not taking those steps to help our schools out when a lot of these schools, you're just fighting to try to keep them open right now. It's ridiculous.
That's true.
So I very much appreciate the work that you have done on this, but I am angry on your behalf.
Thank you.
A little out of line, but to Dr. Jenkins' point, any word on mandates around the MCAS?
Yeah, yeah.
We'll
we
take
just-
that up at another meeting.
Yeah, we can bring that in, but, you
Yeah.
know, they're still I mean, they're
making
reducing
plans.
supposedly time, they've postponed certain tests, but we have not seen any elimination of it at all, even at the younger grades.
Well, I think it would be prudent that maybe at the next month or so that we put that on the agenda just
Yeah.
to have a discussion to
update
see
on that.
where how this committee feels for
Right, so you can
Dartmouth
yell
Public
some more.
Schools.
Really?
Yeah, Yeah.
With that being said, any other questions for Dr. Gifford regarding the
No, Shannon said it all.
SOA?
Dr. Jenkins said it all.
Yes.
So I believe we
You need a motion?
Need a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Nunes, a second by Mrs. Waite. On the motion, any further discussion?
Can you just put the caveat that, with all due respect, we think it's a waste of time to have to do
Yeah,
things of
yeah.
this nature?
Duly
agree.
noted,
We
Mr.
agree.
Duly noted, Mr. Nunes.
Wow.
All in favor?
Aye.
all right.
Opposed? Abstentions?
thank you for
Motion
that.
passes unanimously. Next up, we'll continue
Okay.
on with Dr. Gifford,
Yep.
the 21-22 school calendar.
Yeah, so you do have the calendar in front of you. One of the changes, the proposed changes would be, unlike this year, or actually the last 2 years where we've had a keynote speaker on the 1 or 2 days, the one that we had planned on, again, pre-COVID, and we had everything planned, was going to be fantastic, but he is planning, I believe we've had to shift him to come on the October 6th, a professional development day. And that's really all about our work with implicit bias and that kind of conversation. So with that said, we're looking at an August 30th, just a straight PD day, followed by our normal orientation day, and then students starting on September 1. We did include, if you look in December, the 23rd, beginning the December break on December 23rd, and arriving back on the 2nd of January. So you can either just take that and vote next time, but this is our proposed calendar.
This is fine.
No big differences of anything else.
Right.
It looks good.
I wish we could say something very creative and exciting, but
Yeah.
I think we all say we hope this is the calendar.
Well,
like
yeah.
all of our fingers are crossed.
exactly.
Only hope. That's it.
Exactly.
That's just it.
Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman, motion to approve the Dartmouth Public School calendar for academic year 21-22.
Second.
All right.
So I have a motion by Mr. Nunes, a second by Dr. Jenkins, I'll give it to. On the motion, any other discussion? I am just, before I call a vote, I'm just taking one last
Take
look
a
at
quick
this since
peek.
we're not bringing it back. I have nothing. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously for the 21-22 school calendar.
All right.
Next up is the Ffc Ra Extension. I had spoken to Dr. Gifford last week, and I just asked her if she wouldn't mind updating the committee on the act and the extension of benefits.
Sure. So I think you're all aware that the FFCRA was an act that required employers to provide certain benefits, leave benefits, because of the COVID crisis to folks, and that expired at the end of the 2020. So the requirement, although that expired, it did allow for employers to continue to offer the benefits to folks. So I'll just go over those quickly, what they were, and then let you know what we've done. They list 5 qualifying reasons for leave, but really the 6th one makes no sense. And when we researched it way back, they just said nobody ever came to any determination what it really meant, so ignore it. It said experiencing any other similar condition specified by the Secretary of Health and Human Services, and no one knew what that meant. So basically, we had 5 reasons for folks to be able to take leave under COVID. And just quickly, The first one was that if they were subject to a federal, state, or local quarantine order, which happens often, they've been advised by a healthcare provider to self-quarantine for various medical reasons, obviously, or they were experiencing symptoms and seeking a medical diagnosis. Number 3, that's the one we run into most often. And number 4 was that they were caring for someone who was in quarantine. And the 5th one, which is the extended FMLA, is for childcare reasons. If their child school is closed and they can't have any other kind of daycare, they have nobody qualified to take care. So we have a few people using that leave. A number of them are intermittent, where they might, because we're hybrid, their children are hybrid, so they come to work one day and they can stay home with their child another. Not too many, but we do have a few. But as I said, the majority of our folks use that one where they've obviously experiencing symptoms, go home, they're seeking a medical diagnosis and a test. So what that did was, for 1, 2, and 3, they were able to use up to 2 weeks. So each instance, they could, so if I get sick 5 times and had to seek medical attention and COVID tests, I could use that many times. And that was their regular rate of pay. The the next one is a 2/3. That was for number 4, where they have caring for an individual that is in quarantine, and they could receive 2/3 of the pay, but they're each 2 weeks at a time. The last one, the caring for the child, what we did was early on, that can be, it's a 2-week and then an additional 10 weeks. So basically a 12-week leave, if you will, or use of that time to care for their child. Like I said, some are intermittent. So we did on the first 2 weeks, they would receive 2/3 pay. We allowed them to then compensate or supplement that with the 1/3 with their own sick time. So that was the first 2 weeks, and then the 10 weeks is 2/3 of their pay. So that was the Leave Act. We also allow folks, obviously they have contractual leave, a medical documentation, etc. So we have some of those. So when that went by the wayside, you know, I talked to Mr. Kiley, because it was ending that week, we had folks coming back to work right away. You have to make a decision. So we decided at least to extend it through January, so it stays as is. Folks continue to put in their paperwork, which we maintain, keeping track of who's using what and whatever. I'm sure it's a nightmare for Dale.
Sounds like a nightmare for
I don't
payroll.
even go in her office. I know in the beginning she worked hard with Jim to figure that out. The documentation, Kate maintaining spreadsheets on who's doing what and when. The principals are very good about when folks are out, whether it's on quarantining, etc., letting us know who is out, for what reason. That's what I've told them. Always email us those people, because I have to say, as much as this leave is available, most of our teachers, probably well over 90%, have continued to teach, if they can, remotely. If we're able to, obviously when we are remote, it's very easy. If they're not ill and they're just waiting for a test result, they're continuing to teach remotely. Many of them also continue to teach remotely even when our students were in. What we have to do, of course, is have someone supervising the classroom. So that could be, so it's up to the principal if they can organize that, which a number of them do. So we felt strongly that this was important to continue, because our message is we don't want people to come to work sick, feeling sick. So if we didn't have this available to them and they don't feel well, but yet maybe don't have enough sick time, who knows if they're going to feel like they have to come to work. So we have not felt it be abused at all. Like I said, people could be using this many times when they're seeking a diagnosis, but choose to teach remotely, so they're not using any. So that's what we did. Let them know that we extended this at least through the end of January. to be honest, I can't imagine not having it in
I
place.
was just going to ask you.
Yeah.
I just
past
can't.
January, yeah.
Yeah, I can't. And I know some districts, some colleagues of mine stopped it. I don't know how they're faring. I just don't know. But
Well, it's nice to hear that the majority,
we're doing that.
of our staff
Yeah.
are really trying, and
they are.
if they can work from home,
Yeah, they've been outstanding.
teach remotely from home, they
Yeah.
are.
Back tenfold.
I mean, some just, they're clamoring to do it, and sometimes we just can't allow it because we don't have the supervision in the school or whatever it might be.
Sure.
So our probably intent is to continue on at least through the winter months and, see how this is going, and
Sure.
if it stops, it stops. But, yeah.
Well, thank you for that. Any
Yep.
other comments, questions on that?
That's fine. Thank you.
No,
Thank
thank
you
for
for-
Appreciate
sharing
that, and
with us.
appreciate all the work they're
Alright.
doing.
You're welcome.
Everybody's doing.
Yeah, I don't know what folks would do without it.
Next up,
Okay.
we have the
One more
superintendent's
thing,
update.
okay. All right, so what do we have? A few things here. That's the Ffc Ra. Okay. Couple of things. Let's see. So I did send you an email today after discussion with the AD. We had some positive cases on the teams over the last couple of days, another couple over the weekend on one of the other teams, and he just felt very strongly with, and in conversation with Mr. Michaud as well. He was on the conference call this morning, just talking about athletics in general. We just felt it would behoove us to just pause for this week because we had some of the teams coming back. One was Thursday, one was Saturday, and then the girls' JV wouldn't come back till, January 23rd. All we had left was freshman boys and girls varsity basketball playing right now, and who knows what was going to happen.
Yeah.
So we've put a pause on that, and the plan would be to reinstate on January 19th. So just for the week, just a pause on the athletics. Music is fine right now. I haven't heard one thing about them.
So that was through January 19th,
Yeah, they
Dr.
would
Gifford?
restart on January 19th. So Andy will take care of, and there are other teams in the leagues that have been postponing, and it's just, our real intent is to really try to keep kids engaged and involved and give them something to do. But when folks are coming to practice not feeling well, and those are the things that are happening. So that's that piece. We have, just so you know, we've been trying to get a teacher to replace our PATHS, P-A-T-H-S teacher at Quinn. The behavioral, goodness, what's the words I'm looking for? The students that have significant needs and all of that. And she resigned quite a while ago, and we finally were able to just replace her. The lady will start on the 25th. So we're happy about that because once again at Quinn, we've had a lot of people really helping to try to keep up with that class and man that class. So we were happy about that. As you saw, probably thanks to Miss Jean Sheridan, once again the cafeteria staff's been phenomenal preparing meals, etc. And we added an additional pickup time on Tuesday for meals. I know folks were looking for that. So after work, 4:30 to 6. So that was advertised last week.
And if I
Yeah,
if I
go
could
ahead.
report on that, we have well more than 400 weekly boxes scheduled
Wow.
for tomorrow. So
More than 400.
Yeah.
Imagine.
That's amazing.
100?
Yeah.
thanks to more than
More than
400
400, I'm sorry.
already
Wow.
spoken for tomorrow. So
Right.
Wow.
thanks to
Fan-
Jean and
She's
the
been
cafeteria
she's
staff.
been great. They've all been great. And then last but not least, we did have our weekly meeting with Mr. Michaud this morning. Couple of things. They're implementing the vaccine clinics in town. He and his staff will, whatever staff he has, will be really busy this week, especially getting that off the ground. And he's been, the phase 1 with the emergency responders. We were able to, not us personally, but school nurses are now into the
part of phase
part of
one.
phase
Part of
1.
Phase 1, good.
So he's working with our school nurses on that. He has been talking to us about the possibility of using our facility at some point in time if the need arises for more clinics to be implemented. We talked a lot with him. We did talk with him about the pool testing. And I have to say, after I attended the first webinar myself, Mr. Kiley did,
Yeah.
and we agreed.
I'm curious.
Yes.
I'll reserve my
Yeah,
my
okay.
thoughts till after I hear yours.
All right, and I told Mr. Mishu, I said, I'm so happy to hear you say it. You are echoing my thoughts. We're
What's
not
the
seeing any value in
What's
it.
the ration? I understand what pool testing is,
Yep,
but what is the value behind it?
we can't identify any.
Okay.
I wrote down some of his notes. He was very adamant about it. He said, I'm always open to ideas,
Sure.
and he said exactly when we listened, we said the same thing. It's an only value if we did it every single cohort. You can't say like, oh, Mrs. Smith's room, Mr. Jones' room. It would have to be everyone. He said, what about your buses? What about your athletic teams? Obviously, you need permission from parents to do it. He said it's a 1 week snapshot. And then who's doing it? Who's doing all this work?
Right.
Because then you have to, let's say you get a positive, now you've got to go back and retest again. He said he actually said you're overburdening an already overworked staff. He's not seeing transmission in schools. He keeps saying that over and over again. Too many what ifs, and he is just not in favor of it right now. He just does not see any value in this composite sample. And he also said that DESE is saying that if they got a positive, that it would not be reportable. He said that's absolutely not true. And the local Board of Health has the authority in these cases to determine what is and what isn't. So they're kind of saying all these things, but
Sure.
anyway, that's, I
Okay.
was obviously willing to go to the next webinar, put in our.
Yeah, I was curious to hear about it.
But I wanted obviously his advice, and it's exactly what we thought in the beginning anyway. So I have no more to say about it, but.
So, is there any? Because I know I brought this up before.
Oh, and
Is-
cost. Just one more
Oh.
thing. He said they bring you in for 6 weeks of free, and then who's,
Then there's a cost
Then there's a
associated with it.
cost.
Okay.
so,
Is there any more appetite at the state level as far as distributing more rapid testing? You know that there was that initial 130 something districts that was.
that
the-
Abenix or something testing?
Yeah. Has there been any more
Bionet.
talk on any of the listservs or through any of the
I haven't
the
heard another
commissioners?
thing.
No, Representative Markey reached out to us and was going to advocate on our behalf. We've not heard anything regarding that, the results of that. Mr. Michaud also was working on that and not gotten anywhere with
Right.
that. So.
Right. Keep our ears open, but I haven't heard much else on that. Even with the commissioners' meeting last week, there wasn't really anything said about it.
Well,
So that's where we are.
that's where we are. Well, I will say, I'm looking at the Dartmouth COVID dashboard right now
Yeah.
that was updated. I'm glad to see it was updated on the 8th.
I think Friday, yeah.
Yeah, because there were some residents in town that wanted to know why it wasn't updated and why we made the decision to close go
Right.
remote this week. So clearly, I still think it's the right decision. I
Me too.
think what we spoke about, it just shows you look at the trend at overall the student percentage as of the 8th, 5.37%.
Right.
And that's the highest it's been.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to note that
Well, I don't know if you noticed too, the Dartmouth dashboard itself went up to about 300. I think it about doubled this week.
I did.
But, once again, if we had what we came back to after the holiday, the number of cases that we then met with the Board of Health, met with all of our nurses, and the number of cases that would have come into the school if kids were in, the contact tracing, we would have never been able to maintain it,
No.
keep up with it, with the staff. And even today, I had called in 25 more positive
I was just
cases.
going to say, as of today,
I called 25
just
more in.
today,
Yesterday.
from over the
Wow.
weekend.
For our students or?
Students and staff.
So in
And
one,
again, they haven't been in luckily because we've been remote.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Right.
that's what's helping us.
so if we were not remote, there's the potential that some of those 25
Sure.
could have been in school,
In
last
school
week.
all last week.
When you called in 25 today, and just last week there was just 48.
Yeah.
But there was 48 students.
So, I mean, I'm deeply concerned that we're not through the thick of this yet. You know, if you look at, I'm looking at the Globe's town numbers, our test positivity rate is 13.25% in the town. Fall River, New Bedford are up around 15%. Rhode Island has the highest rate of per capita COVID diagnoses in the nation.
Yeah, it's the smallest state, too.
This is such a hard thing to say, right?
it's very hard.
Someone yesterday from my hometown shared the story of the quarterback on the high school football team, freshman and sophomore, or sophomore and junior, started on the varsity team. He had a 4.7 grade point average, a 1460 SAT, and he committed suicide.
Oh,
This is
God.
really, really, really difficult for these kids. At the same point in time, I'm deeply concerned that it is not safe right now. For our staff, for our students. I've said this to you, Dr. Gifford. I think that we should consider keeping the high school remote probably till the end of this grading period. Makes a sort of a natural transition. I think it alleviates some pressure on staffing and contact tracing.
Right.
I also think high schoolers can be independent. Mr. Oliver and I have talked, right? We can leave our high school kids at home when we go to work or we have to do our things in ways
Right.
we can't for elementary school kids. Plus, the high school kids are crossing paths far more often. They're mixing in ways that elementary students aren't. And so I would like to see us think about doing a slow roll back into face-to-face the way that we did in the fall, to make sure that we continue to not have transmission in the schools. I'm really concerned. We have community spread. And, you know, talking to members of the Board of the Health, that positivity, we're not testing all of the cases that are out there. We're just not. And so I'm deeply worried about returning to school and getting quickly overwhelmed. So I'd like for us to be careful about how we
Yep.
do this and prioritize our learners with the highest needs and our learners that are the youngest, who
younger.
are most unable to be at home alone.
Right. Yeah, I'm in agreement.
Chris? Okay.
Mrs. Blake?
Yes, Dr. Gifford, what did Mr. Michaud say? Did he give you any specific advice what was his take on this should we go back next week in his opinion? What was, I know he said that he doesn't see transmission, that's my first question.
He doesn't say anything about that. I've never point blank said, and I almost thought of it today, like if you had to make the decision, what would you do? But
Fair question.
he said exactly what Dr. Jenkins said. We're not over this, and we're just seeing the real beginning of what's out there. Yeah, and on a positive note, speaking to the principal, just dropping by and talking with them about how's it going with the teachers and teaching, and that piece, the educational piece, seems to be going very well. The elementary folks, because those are the ones we worry about with the younger kids. Are they able to attend? Are they able to access? Doing very well. They think about over 95% of their kids are accessing the teaching and learning. The ones that they're worried about are the ones they would worry about, whether they're in person or not, kind of those names. Mr. Tebow said, the high school teachers feel very, very comfortable with the education they're offering. They feel better, like the curriculum is moving along. Because let's face it, we also put them, they were doing complete synchronous, if you recall, and which was, they were handling it, but it is tricky. They're in mass, half the kids are in, half the kids are on the computer. I mean, you think about, honestly, what educators have had to do this year. If it wasn't so sad, it'd be funny, in a way, So, yeah, we'll, gonna make that decision pretty quickly, because I agree with you. I don't see any harm in it at this point.
So
short
I know
week
that
next week.
on what
Yeah.
we have a meeting. We're going to meet with Mr. Michaud on Wednesday again.
I think
is that the
so.
plan?
The only thing I'm worried about, and I haven't really asked him, is because they're going to be so busy with these clinics.
Yep.
I do have to,
Okay.
but he's been so generous with his time, his
He's
support.
he's phenomenal. He's a phenomenal guy.
Really is. And what we laughed this morning when we were talking about different things and decisions that we're making. And for example, even though the CDC came out with that you could unquarantine after 10 days, et cetera, we said, nope, we're sticking by what we're doing, the 14. We're not changing our practice. But anyway, every time we come up with something, he said, just send him to me. I'll tell him, I'll tell him I said.
No, I agree. But to some of Dr. Jenkins' points, just a few of them, I do think that we really should, as a district, look at how we roll back
Yeah.
into school. And my concern is also, before you know it, February vacation is
Oh,
going
I
to be
know.
upon us. And I know it's nothing like the holidays, but I do, coming back to right now, the present is that we really need to look at the best way to reintroduce our students
Right.
back into school.
Right.
And I'm not sure what the perfect or the correct answer is going to be to that. I do know that I want to, for the record, I want to see students in school next year.
course.
That's what I want.
Yeah.
Because I know there's been a lot of outcry in the community
Yeah.
with some individuals as to kids should be in school. Of course, kids should be in school. I don't think anyone is
No.
disagreeing with the fact that kids should be in school. But it's just a matter of what's the best and safest way to
Right.
do that.
Right.
With that, Dr. Gifford, could you just comment, because I know I got several messages and a phone call, and I'm not sure, I think the full committee did, as to what was the reasoning behind when we talked about bringing back role model students, bringing back our high need students in
Yep.
the district. What was the reasoning or the rationale behind including role model students, those students who pay tuition in our preschool programs, because there were those staff that felt like it was unnecessary risk?
I'm glad you asked. So, first of all, it's about 3 students every other day that come in to join the class. But to the point of trying to get our littlest learners in, that's one of the reasons. And speaking with the elementary principals, they felt and continue to feel, and that's one of the reasons we're hoping to get at least all our elementary kids back in next week, is those skills that are needed in pre-K are particularly difficult to teach without hands-on and getting them in the school. So it was just a judgment call. What can we continue to do? And don't forget, the real reason we went remote in the beginning was to be able to ward off that contact tracing staffing issue, which I think we did. I think we were pretty successful with. It wasn't necessarily because we were fearful of kids bringing in the virus, if you will. I mean, we've had issues, of course, but that was it. Just getting those kids, the smallest little guys, in to continue accessing those skills that are just really difficult.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if that, and I'm sure it probably was, but if that could just be communicated with you through Dr. Dale to the staff, because it sounded like maybe there was some miscommunications over at Cushman as to the rationale and the whole
Sure.
method behind that. So whatever you can do to
Okay.
help that out would be greatly
Sure.
appreciated.
Sure.
Anyone else?
Go ahead.
You mentioned that's really great that you've hired for that
Yeah.
brain-based therapeutic classroom. How many kiddos are there in that classroom now? Do you know
I think
currently?
4.
Okay.
I think 4.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, that's wonderful to have hired for
Yes.
that position. I agree with Dr. Jenkins. Well, I want to see I would love to
We
have
all
every
do.
every kid's in school. Of course, that goes without saying. And I worry about students learning and all of that. I do agree with that idea that it sounds like you're sort of in agreement to potentially in slowly rolling
Right.
in elementary in first, middle, and then high school as we had done in September. But I'm going to be a broken record, and I'm going to start talking a little bit about, our high need students. Of course, we have our high need students in person. And Desi's guidance, as I said last meeting, is that, that's the floor, not the ceiling. And I just would love to see us do a little bit more work. That sounds terrible. I'm exhausted. Everyone's exhausted. You're all doing a lot of work. But I would hope that as we move on and continue, in this needing to be social, distanced and everything, that we do a little bit better about expanding that. And I'm not expecting that it's going to, include all students, but just what the guidance says, we know that high needs, and we know that the commissioner, Russell Johnston, spelled out, like, if you're having trouble figuring out what students, go with your program students. I get that. But it also does say students who cannot engage in remote learning due to their disability-related needs, students who primarily use aided and augmentative communication, students who are homeless, students in foster care or congregate care, and/or students duly identified as English learners. And I say that because, full disclosure, everyone knows I have a son who clearly is high needs. He's not in district currently, but he was home last week. He went back to school this week, so I feel guilty saying that. Just last week was horrible. I'm not, I have a 5th grader who is doing wonderfully. Her teacher from DeMello is phenomenal. You would think they're having a party every day. The level of enthusiasm that the teacher brings to the table. I'm very fortunate. I understand that I have a home bedroom office. It's not really, I haven't really made it a full office yet, but I work from home and I have that luxury, so I know that I'm lucky to be able to do that. But in having my son home, I just feel so deeply for those kiddos, and there are a few of them that I know I've expressed, well, there's one in particular, but I know there's probably a handful, just a handful. And so I would like us to make that judgment call and just do a little bit better for those kids. Not all kids, not my daughter. She's happy at home, doing wonderfully. She seems to be pretty confident in her, and luckily her mental health does not seem to be affected. And I know that many students are, and that's really sad. But I'm talking about those kids that just don't understand the who are borderline that high needs, who can't attend to that glass classroom, who just really require the routine and the structure of being in a certain place, sort of, being in a school kind of is reminiscent of a structure. I know when my son sees his teachers in a picture, or he's in that school, and even if it's not a full programming that he's used to, he snaps back into it quickly. And so I just would like to see us make a little bit, do a little bit more work to make sure that we think about including those students in person whenever possible, if we were to stay remote.
Well, to your point, we met, Beth and I, Ms. Townsend, Lori, Jodwin, and I met with all the principals last week. I think I didn't get to one of the meetings. I had the commissioner meeting, but to discuss just that. We have around 20 students in the district that we've identified. We call them AB students because they come both days right now. And we just threw it out there that to start thinking about how we might accommodate those kids, if we were, which I'm hoping not, have to go complete remote again, or like for the long time or something. It's easier in some schools than others, or some levels than others, I have to say. Part of the problem is, for example, one school I think had 7 students, and they were in all different grade levels. So do you bring a 1st grader in, a 2nd grader in, a 3rd grader, and put them in a class with no one, and who's, and then bring in TAs to supervise? So it's not to say it's impossible. There's also the transportation of those 20 kids to think about, and just various logistics. But we did ask them to come up with a plan of, if that were the case, what might it look like? I do think the high school, I talked to John Bro, who's the lead teacher in the special ed department, of course, at the high school, and then Mr. Tebow, and it seems like it might be an easier. I can't remember if it was 5, 6, 7 kiddos that would fit that category of students that were already coming both days. So
That's
we
wonderful
did,
to hear.
yeah, we've at least started the conversation to think about how might it work.
That's
So
music to my ears. So
yeah, because we get it,
Yep.
but it's
Yep.
just there's just a lot of complexities for any decision, right?
And I'm sure that there are some students who meet that criteria, though,
Yeah.
who are able to attend and are having a better time because
There
of
are.
social anxiety.
There are.
And so I'm sure it's a mixed
Yeah,
bag. But
like when I talked to Potter, they had a number of students that, come AB, but felt because they were accessing the instruction extremely well, they weren't really AB because of social emotional or behavior or anything like that, so they probably wouldn't bother, but
perfect. Right. Yeah.
yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
That's all I have.
Mr. Nunes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a little bit torn here. I understand what Dr. Jenkins is saying about, shutting down for another week. I've just got some concerns, and, I've been a proponent from the get-go is having, the students with the teachers and vice versa type of deal. I kind of, you think about the remote learning, and it was funny. If you happen to watch, as dumb as it sounds, if you happen to watch the football game last night between Pittsburgh and Cleveland, the lady that's the sideline reporter for NBC was talking about Cleveland having to do a lot of remote stuff and what the players went through remote with the cards and flipping
Yeah.
them over in the play and everything, and quote unquote, these are college graduates or college, and, having the difficulty
Yeah.
with it. I can almost imagine what our students are going through. To me, it comes back to, and I've said, and talk about being a broken record, I've said this on numerous occasions. I think it's incumbent upon the parents and also the students to not sit there and think about their son or daughter, being macho and saying, I've got to go to school, whether you're, I've got basketball practice, I've got band practice, I've got to be there. Don't load them up with Tylenol, because that's only going to work for a couple of hours, and the fever comes back and everything goes right out the window. Maybe all they have, in all seriousness, is a 24-hour bug, or they've got a sinus headache. So if they stay home for 24 hours, no harm, no foul type of deal.
Yep.
But to take it one step further, and again, I'll go back to the discussion that Mr. Oliver and I had back in March when the thought about closing school and everything else goes. I mean, my personal opinion is I think we almost have to wait. Thank God we've got a long weekend. So, if you're going to do it with just the high school, then we can wait into Thursday or Friday to make that call, because at least parents are not scrambling for
Exactly.
childcare or anything else. If it unfortunately is going to involve the elementary schools, and I hope not, and middle, then I think, the sooner the better,
Yeah.
Wednesday or Thursday.
Right.
Because that way the parents can make the plans. Again, it's only 4 days. And by the way, to go back to Dr. Jenkins' question for a second, because when is the end of semester?
I don't know that date. Anybody, Jim? Do
Is
you
it
know
like the
that date?
25th or somewhere in that vicinity?
20.
I want to say it's the 28th, but I don't know why that date
Think it's
sticks
that
in my
late?
head.
Somewhere in there,
Yeah,
okay,
honestly,
but again, so I
yeah.
mean, we'd be talking
knows?
another
Oh,
two
yeah.
full,
It's usually that
I'm
weekend.
not we'd be talking another 2 full weeks out.
Right.
So, I mean, I go back to,
Yeah, I thought I had it on my
another 2 weeks
calendar.
with,
It's not.
even not being hybrid, and though
Yep.
it's a full remote, it's a lot different than
Oh, yeah.
being in person, so,
Yeah.
I mean, I'll defer to the experts, don't get me wrong, but my personal
know, it's
opinion
hard.
is if we can get them in, get them in.
Yep.
That's all I have, Mr.
Yep.
Chairman, thank you.
Mary?
Yeah, just as a follow-up, I have to say I you know, I'm torn too. I have a freshman who's really struggling, you know,
Yeah.
being home, and, you know, a junior who's done great. But both of them say, I mean, there's no doubt they learn better at being at school, and, you know, they love being at school.
Yeah.
You know, absolutely, I think, you know, the elementary students, let's get them back if we can. I mean, we know that transmission rates, you know, just what we've
Yep.
seen, it doesn't seem that they're transmitting it to their teachers, to each
Right.
other. It's coming from adults to them in most cases. But I guess my question would be more for, you know, if we're talking about high school students, is there an option, since they are synchronous, is there a penalty for students who choose to stay home because they don't feel safe coming into the schools? But let's say we say, we're going to bring them back, but can we give students the option and families the options to stay home and remain remote? And then the other student, you know, if they're not feeling safe. So even though, you know, even if as a school department we say, or a school department says, you know, we can bring our students back, you know, we feel comfortable. But, you know, one family says, I'd rather stay home just until, is that a possibility for us to do that?
Well, we've had a couple of those instances happen, and as you know, if they're just regular hybrid and they're coming in and they're sick, we want them to stay in.
Right.
Part of the problem has been, unfortunately, kids are abusing it.
Okay.
In that respect, where the teachers I talked to was very struggling, because now sometimes they'd have 4 kids show up because they're like, oh, I'll just stay home.
Okay.
So we're trying not to, because in theory that creates a whole third level of model of education.
Okay.
You know, we're already, I mean, I think, and knowing other districts, to be honest, that have done like the virtual, let's say the TECA and Edgenuity, I don't care what anyone says out there, we have go above and beyond for these kids and families. We've been more than accommodating. We offer, like our TECA kids even, Mr. Doan was just saying, they're very welcome. You know, we want kids to come to those after school. We're still having the after school. 12 teachers are available for tutoring. I know it's a little bit off the subject. I just want to kind of
No, but it's
tutoring
well taken. No, you're making.
all the subjects. So kids even in TECA that are having problems.
That's actually
Right.
really good to hear, because I
Exactly.
know of other districts that are not
That's
doing
right. And the guidance counselors are working very hard with those kids to keep in touch. And conversations with Mr. Doan and even Mr. Galasha, who still continues to help with that. I think there are only 3 or 4 families in I'm just talking middle school, that have frequent issues. The rest of the people seem to be pretty happy. But, you know, the high school, back to your question, all the schools, they bend over backwards. And I think people have to give a little grace, to be honest, because it's just wearing on everyone. To try to step up and do their part, just as Mr. Nunes was saying, and come if we say to come, and, you know, do you know what I'm getting at? Because then it creates a whole nother model of education, really. Because now you might have 20 kids remote and 4 come into a classroom. Because they don't feel safe or something. I know it's hard for everybody, but
There's no perfect.
I
it's no
understand.
perfect.
I mean, I think this is what we struggle with too. And I
Yeah.
know, like, for some people, like, we made the decision to put our kids, all of us collectively, in school when the positivity rate, we had about 10 cases per week. We have 300 cases per
Right.
week. And that's a very different calculus.
January
And
25th.
so,
January 20th.
you know, we are coming up towards the end of the semester, and so maybe it is good to send a reminder to parents to say, this is a decision point.
That's right.
Right? If you are going to make
Absolutely.
your decision, please let us know now. What Mary's suggesting, right, which I would think maybe we could do, that's not an option. So this is your time and your window to make that decision.
Right.
I will say, you know, we've been having those conversations because of my personal health. The high school has been tremendously supportive about us trying to figure that out.
Figure it out,
It
yep.
is going to take adjustment, but I think maybe we should remind parents and say, what Mary, because we've thought about that personally too, what
Yeah.
Mary has suggested is not an option. So if you are no longer comfortable, here's the date, here's your window. You
Has
need
any
to
type of
do that now.
communication
Yeah, that's
gone
good.
out to families gauging whether or not they want to stay in TECA or stay
Not
in
recently,
Edgenuity?
no, but we certainly can do that now that we're coming to, like you said, and somebody just texted me, January 25th, 's the end of the, so that's good. They're watching
Okay.
anyway, right?
That's good.
Well, that's good.
But we can certainly do that
Okay.
to make sure folks are aware of, yeah, as a reminder.
Right.
And
good.
even though we set some parameters early on, you can't move this time of the,
I
We
mean,
didn't
I think
stick
we
by
did tell,
them.
I think we did tell people the decision was
Yeah.
till the semester break.
At the
Yeah.
semester breaks, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But some, that it's just hard to, even somebody said, I guess they asked at the high school, I think it was, since we were 2 weeks remote, can they come into the classrooms? And it's just not that easy, like with that,
Right.
your child has been through Edgenuity, so,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, Lord.
Yes.
Yeah,
Mr. Nunes.
just one last thing too. I mean, if we do if the decision is made for the high school to go remote, and that's fine, that doesn't mean for our students to go out and congregate with 75 of their friends, okay? That's gonna defeat the whole purpose.
Yeah.
Okay? You gotta still do hopefully what you are doing.
Right.
And that is, be safe, social distance, wear the mask,
Right.
et cetera. So,
And the benefit, if there is one, is once again, as teachers have to quarantine, if we're remote, especially at the high school, which is a little bit different animal of offering good there aren't many calculus people out there or whatever, it's harder. They're able to continue to teach because everybody's remote.
Right.
So
Yep.
there is no one right answer, but
There is no
no.
one right answer. However, I think that we just take the cautious approach
Yeah.
right now. And
Yeah, that's what
I
I'm
think,
thinking.
Yeah.
overall, I think the committee
would
will
support that.
support,
Yeah.
some of us. A little bit of a different
Yeah,
angle, but
yeah.
overall, I think
Yeah.
we would support that. What? I didn't say anything about Mr. Nunes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gifford. Is that it? Anything else?
I think that's it. I mentioned the virtual schools with
That's good.
middle school offering that, high school still, working hard on their Edgenuity kids, and of course the virtual elementary's going well. They are obviously welcome. Meals are for everyone, all of that. So that's all.
All right.
That's all I have. Chris.
Good conversation.
Yes.
It's something that came about not because anyone was trying to not do the right thing, but it just, here we are in COVID, and it's sort of sometimes things come up, and
Yep.
we just all can't be perfect and think of everything, although we make it criticized to the degree that people
Yeah.
think that we know every scenario,
all.
and we're trying to make people's lives miserable.
The amount of money we get paid, we should
Yeah.
know everything.
Sure.
Right. Well, one thing that did come up in my own with speaking with a family that happens to be happily in remote or reasonably happy in remote or reasonable.
Reasonably happy.
Period. Sorry. I'm not going on social media tonight. But I have a fifth grader, and I was talking with a friend, and just slipped through the cracks. So if anyone has a student who's like moving out of one level and there's a yearbook involved, I'm not talking about parties or anything, to reach out to the principal. If you're in TECA, if you're in the virtual academy, and say you're a fifth grader or you're an eighth grader and you are in virtual academy and you would have been hearing about things and you're probably getting the notifications, but because our lives are all so complex and they're probably going into spam, or you're not really paying attention
Sure.
because life is so all over the place right now. If it comes to you like it did to this friend, to say, oh, I didn't think of that. Of course I want my child
To
to
have-
be in the yearbook.
Right.
And it was a boom, quick fix. So if you are
Yeah.
in that situation and you
Good
haven't
point.
heard anything about a yearbook and you're a fifth
Yeah.
grader, or like I said, an eighth grader, I don't know if that's happened yet in eighth grade, but
Yeah.
I do know there's planning happening in fifth grade for that. And you want your child who's remote to be
Yep.
memorialized in their yearbook, reach
course.
out to the principal of
They
your
are still
former
our
school.
students. Even
Right.
They're
though
still
in
our
TECA, they are
students,
still
and
our
just if
students.
you haven't heard
If
from
they
them,
feel
it's not
they've
because
missed
they don't
something,
want.
obviously call,
Yes,
let them
and
know.
not be afraid of that back and forth, that
Yep.
interaction,
Yep.
because nobody is sitting here trying to discard
No,
or
right.
deliberately
Yeah.
not doing
exclude
something that
someone,
should be
right.
So encourage families to just be open to that dialogue.
Absolutely.
I'm done.
Very, very well said, Mrs. Amaral.
Yes.
And, you know, that I'll lead into. I think I got on social media a little bit the other night last
that's
week,
your
which I
mistake.
typically stay away from, and I think it's important to note because there's a lot of misleading information out there in the world, in the community as well as around the country and around the world. But please make no mistake about it. There are our faculty, our staff, our administration here at the Dartmouth Public Schools, and I don't say this lightly. You know, I'm very proud to live in Dartmouth. I'm very proud to have a school department, the faculty, the staff, the administration that we have. We're very fortunate in this community to have the resources that we do, including the school system. I think the Dartmouth Public School System is one of the best in the area, one of the best in the area without a doubt. We are extremely flexible,
Yes.
as Dr. Gifford
Yes.
mentioned earlier. Our teachers go above, and I'm not saying this they don't elsewhere, but what I can tell you is that seeing what my daughter's doing and hearing from other staff, our teachers go above and beyond to support families. And it really hurts me, breaks me to my core when I hear negativity
Yeah.
about staff.
Yeah.
That's unfounded. So I just
Yeah.
wanted to go and say thank you,
Yep, I
you
agree.
to our educators that are in the rooms I know that are working on weekends, putting together their remote lessons to get ready, updating their Google Classrooms. That all takes time. This is a job that you were not doing. Well, you weren't doing it this time last year. It's going on a year. But
Yes.
these are all things that you've learned together. And I just can't thank enough. I can't thank everyone enough for the job they're doing. And I really do hope that everyone was able to get a little bit of downtime with their families.
Yeah. Thank you.
With that, I think that's really important to know because I see I kind of watch some of the other school committees in the area as well as in my free time. I like to watch the Department of Education meetings.
Yeah,
So
those are a
those
trip.
board meetings
Oh,
are
my Lord.
very entertaining. I will just leave everyone with this. At the last school committee meeting, this committee had some discussions around the appointment of the Equality and Diversity Committee. And I have a little prepared statement. I'm just going to read it. So at the last meeting, during discussions around community member appointments to the Diversity and Equality Committee, there was some discussion that ensued around the possible appointment of Mr. Christopher Pereira. Due to their joint relationship on the Dartmouth Education Foundation with Chris Pereira, Dr. Jenkins and Mrs. Waite made some comments regarding their opposition of Mr. Pereira sitting on the Diversity and Equality Committee. Whether or not Mr. Pereira made some of those comments at another meeting or during another time that Dr. Jenkins or Mrs. Waite reference, it is my opinion as the chair of this committee that those types of statements should not have been made without Mr. Pereira in the room and given a chance to speak. Mr. Pereira did contact me, and he did send a letter to the entire committee demanding an apology on some of those things of what was said. While I will not apologize, as I have done nothing wrong, I will, however, say this. I will go on the record tonight at tonight's school committee meeting, making the public aware that Chris Pereira, Mr. Pereira, and I had a conversation on the phone, and that he denied those statements made by said members and found them to be offensive. It is his hope that these types of negative comments are not made in the future when potential committee applicants come forward to volunteer. Mr. Pereira also feels that this could have been avoided if Dr. Jenkins and Mrs. Waite had concerns if they would have reached out to Mr. Pereira directly. Once again, I want to thank Chris for reaching out to me and thank him for all the dedicated work that he has done to the town of Dartmouth. In my personal opinion, a lot of this, whether it be communication issues between Mr. Pereira and what was said, I wasn't there. But he adamantly felt that his words were taken out of context. So I told him that if he would like to continue having that discussion, to please reach out to Mrs. Waite or Dr. Jenkins directly.
That's
Dr. Jenkins.
I would like to have the opportunity to respond. There are two facts that are not under debate here. Mr. Pereira opposed the forming of a committee to discuss a mascot. Mr. Pereira opposed a grant to demolish a school to buy books focused on diversity. Mr. Pereira has his reasons for his opposition, but he did take those positions. That's not under dispute here. What is under dispute is the interpretation of these positions. It is Mr. Pereira's claim that those positions do not mean he is opposed to discussions around diversity. I disagree with his interpretation of these positions. I very much appreciate the work that Mr. Pereira has done for the schools and for the town, but on this we disagree.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mrs. Waite?
Yeah, and I think I'll just respond. I also would like to say that, just in general, I feel confident that we did choose the best members of the Diversity and Equity Committee. I believe the committee put a lot of thought and hard work into the discussion. Certain issues came up based on, our personal conversations and experiences and emails and communications, and, those did feed into my decision-making. I think that the committee we've chosen will be the ones who will be following the charge of the committee and will best uphold our goals that we have for that committee. And I certainly do appreciate the efforts of all our applicants, including Mr. Pereira. And again, I want to second what Dr. Jenkins said in that he has contributed quite a bit to our town. And certainly I, had mentioned that at our last meeting, certainly a lot around Veterans Affairs, serving on this committee as well. And I apologize for any disappointment that our, candidates, who applied, who were not chosen for the committee feel. I hope that they continue to contribute to our committee as we work towards inclusion and diversity. So,
Thank you.
Yep.
No, I appreciate the matter at hand. Anyone else wishing to comment on anything good for the good of the committee?
Yeah, I've got two things, Mr. Chairman, real quick. Number one, good luck to our DECA students. I know they're doing everything remote. This upcoming week, I'm waiting for, I'm judging again, so I'm waiting for.
Is there anything that you do not
Right.
do?
No, not quite. No, it's one of this is one of those things that this is enjoyable because this is really helping students and seeing how they interact and everything else. So they're supposedly taping all their presentations and, we get to judge them remotely. So that's coming up sometime in the next week to 10 days. So I'm really looking forward to that. And, our Dartmouth students I know will be there too. So we wish them all good luck. And number two, somewhere down the line, is it possible, I don't know if Hvac forwards them to us. I happen to see a couple of the Hvac school committee meetings on local television, but I haven't, not that they're much of anything that they send us, but their minutes,
Oh,
do they ever send them to you? Or
no.
can
no.
you reach out to
Yeah. I think
to
you'll be
Hvac, to
disappointed.
Mr. Watson
but
and to
yes.
the superintendent, Mr. O'Brien,
Yeah,
and see if we can,
Sure.
for what they put in there, which is nothing.
sure.
Well, you know
Get
what,
that.
Mr. Nunes, you actually bring up a very good point regarding the minutes. We are a feeder district for New Bedford
Right.
Vocational Technical High School. And I think it would be prudent that those school committee meetings are aired on our DCTV because they involve Dartmouth students.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the last one that they had, I just happened to catch it.
But was that on DCTV or is
on
it just on?
That was on DCTV.
Okay, so
it
they
was
are
either on
airing them
9
on-
or either Channel 9 or Channel 18.
So
I'm
they
not
are.
sure
I
which
was
one.
I was unaware they're airing them on. I don't have local cable.
I
I
just
just
happened
watch
to see-
everything on the internet.
I just happened to see it, so that's
Okay.
how I knew, type of deal. So, but, and again, I mean, they were all socially distanced and couldn't really hear a heck of a lot. But if we had their minutes, we may have an idea.
Sure.
Type of
We
deal.
can ask for those.
No, that's.
Can I follow up on that? I believe we've made this request before.
We
And
have.
We shouldn't have to ask. They should be doing that as a matter of course, right?
We used to get them back.
Right.
We used to get them, type of deal, and then all of a sudden they've stopped. And to be honest, I didn't really think about it.
Well, I was on the committee with the three of you, the three of us. We asked them when we had
Yeah.
to appoint someone. We said we would like to receive the minutes regularly. We sent
Yeah.
them that request. They did for a while and they stopped. That
Yeah.
is their obligation, not ours, to chase those down.
Yeah, so
All right, we'll look
between
into
Mr.
that.
Watson and
Yep.
Mr.
gonna say,
Pimento and
yeah,
Mr. O'Brien.
I'll email
Okay.
Dr. Cindy Marlin and
Yeah.
Mr. Mike Shea
Mike Shea,
and
yeah.
CC Mr. O'Brien
That's right, 'cause
on,
they were on the
that
committee.
request.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah.
It should be part of their routine process.
Yeah, just sending
Yep.
it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, that's all I have.
And I just lost my place because I opened up a new tab. Let's see. Agenda brief.
I think that's it.
All right, so with that being said, the next regularly scheduled meeting of the Dartmouth School Committee is Monday, January 25th, 2021, to be held right here, God willing, in the Library Media Center at the Dartmouth High School at 6:30 p.m. Public access will be via the Dartmouth High School YouTube channel, and of course, anyone wishing to comment on any of those agenda items, get them over to Kathleen Genthner, our recording secretary.
get
And
it? Did she-
we thank you, Kate, for helping out and stepping up in this pandemic.
Yes, thank you.
At this time,
Kate.
Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Noon, second by Mrs. Amaral. On the motion, any other discussion?
Nope.
Chair hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Go Ohio State.
Meeting is adjourned.
Very good.
I'll probably be sleeping in about an hour.
Me too. I'm with you. Oh my goodness, I've been waking up 3, 4 o'clock.
What's that?
I might be the first one.
Oh, it's crazy.
No, I'm just.
Did you really? Wow, it's becoming quite the thing to watch. Huh?
How was his day back? How was Liam's day back today? Did he